From the beginning of time, God has been trying to get our attention so that we could see his character with greater clarity. It's often at midnight, in a state of night blindness, that the light appears, the unpredictable bright light, or just the tiny flickering hint of a light. Either way, it's light, and with it comes vision and clarity. He did this with the Exodus. What a dark time they'd experienced for so long. And then came that glory story of deliverance. He did it by an act of grace for Israel as they entered Canaan and took Jericho. He did it through the prayer of Daniel, bringing about the return of a remnant to Israel. And he did it in the most surreal and astounding way when he sent Jesus to be born as a baby. What a midnight clear moment. History seemed bleak and foggy with 400 years of silence from God. And then God broke through that midnight and gave us a gift-defining moment of clarity for the entire world. History was recalibrated and the future looked entirely different because Jesus was born in a manger on a midnight clear. Imagine with me the lead up to that scene of Bethlehem. I think of Joseph on entering Bethlehem. He'd seen the angel some 9 months previously. He'd received that message, that incredible insight. He knew who this was in Mary's tummy, who was about to enter the world. But on this night, the night of all nights in the history of the world, on this night that would divide time itself, nothing's working. Can you hear his thoughts? A census? Now? Really, God? Is this your plan? No room? Hardship? Adversity? Desperation? This is your son. We can't even find him a bed. Don't you care? I feel like an Israelite asked to make bricks without straw. And there he is, amid darkness and confusion, caught in a clogged shroud of plans gone very wrong. Can't you see Joseph's perplexity? It shouldn't be happening like this. This has been planned from the dawn of time, and yet this is chaotic, stressful, and in the uncertainty of the events, he's baffled, perplexed, dazed. It's really midnight. Isn't his story so often our story? The Bible is so full of promises, and yet at times we live in the middle of a tangled muddle, broken, confused, crouching in darkness. Joseph couldn't see what you and I can see now, that God's entry into the world would be a living object lesson from a God who wanted to experience not just our world, but our bleakest moments. He didn't see, as we can, that the heart of God would be on display in his identification with the lowliest of circumstance. Out of the midnight confusion would emerge a crystal clear message. God is with us in our most humble, vulnerable, desperate, circumstances. He knows what it means to be fully human. What Satan tries to bring about with the shame of an ignominious birth, God is able to overcome with an incredible strength of identity. How reassured Joseph must have felt with the arrival of the shepherds and the wise men who came bearing gifts and worshipping this little one. Jesus really was the Messiah. A true star had been born. It was a midnight clear. There's an adage that I love, and it says, the best things in life can't be explained, they must be experienced. And so today, we're going to share some experiences of those midnight clear moments. And perhaps along this journey, a midnight clear moment might come to you and you say, oh, I've got to share that. I've got to share that midnight moment. And you might like to take the opportunity to do that as well. So let's share some experiences of midnight clear moments. One such occurred to me with an incredible experience I had. I had the privilege of going to Pitcairn Island. I actually spent some of my young years on Pitcairn. It's a little island, 2 miles long by 1 mile wide, out in the middle of the Pacific. Two nights and 1 day's journey by boat to the furthermost reaches of the an east island of French Polynesia. And so it's quite a long way from anywhere. But I'd gone out there with another minister, introducing this minister to his congregation on Pitcairn Island, and there'd been quite a bit of dysfunction occurring on the island with some sexual misconduct that had been tried, and 5 men from the island had been judged and were about to go to jail on the island. And here I was on the island, and this night I remember as clear as daylight. Was about the middle of the night, as circumstances had it, and I was thinking about one of these men that had been tried, and I was concerned for him, and my heart was going out to him in terms of some ministry support, and so I said to the Lord, God, if you want me to have a chat with this man, I'll walk past their place, and if the light's on, I'll go in and have a talk. Well, I walked past and the light wasn't on, and so I kept walking, and it was a beautiful night, full moon, and I walked on down the Hill of Difficulty, as it's called, to Bounty Bay, and there out before me were the waves coming in one by one. You know, this rhythmic crash of the waves on the shoreline, and it was an incredibly lonely moment. Of here I was, so far from anywhere, so far from family, and yet in that moment, I sensed God's presence, because something incredible happened. I looked out to sea beyond the waves, and this amazing falling star took place right before my eyes, and it actually crashed into the sea, and out in the far distance, obviously. And I thought, there's no one else on this world who's seen that. I'm out in the blue yonder. No one else has seen that, but God has had that happen just for me to recognise His presence in my life. And as I went back up that hill of difficulty, it was like I glided up that hill, because I really recognised, that God was there present with me. And the text that came to mind was from Psalms 139, where it says, I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. And it's not like God's like this at me. It's like God is watching there over me, protective of me. And it says, if I go up to heaven, you're there. If I go down to the grave, you're there. If I ride the wings of the moment, if I dwell by the farthest ocean, even there your hand will guide me and your strength will support me. And I thought, that was a moment of, even though I dwelt by that farthest ocean, God was there with me. It was a midnight clear moment. Let me share one more quickly while I'm in this reflective mode. In reflecting back on my teenage years, I felt a sense of abandonment by my parents at one stage. Who had parents as PK? Who had PKs? Yes. Who had missionary parents? Parents who were missionaries, yes. You can probably identify with what I'm talking about because in my teen years, my parents accepted a call to go up to Rabaul, New Guinea, and I stayed in Australia and lived with my grandma and went to school. And it was later in life that I really sensed that this abandonment by my parents for what took place there. But it came back to haunt me about nearly 6 years ago when my mum died. And so I felt the abandonment of missing her. And my dad took up a relationship and was about to be married to another lady. And I felt abandoned by Dad as well. And so here I am walking along early one morning, and I was reflecting on Scripture as I was walking. And it struck me, this sense of abandonment. And I was weeping as I was walking, I don't mind admitting. And not that I ever do that. But as I was reflecting on this and that sense of abandonment, another passage of Scripture struck me from Psalms chapter 27 and verses 6 and following. And it goes like this. Hear me as I pray, O Lord. Be merciful and answer me. My heart has heard you say, come and talk with me. And my heart responds, Lord, I'm coming. Do not turn your back on me. Do not reject your servant in anger. You've always been my helper. Don't leave me now. Don't abandon me, O God of my salvation. And here was the punchline that really struck home. Even if my mother and father abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. Isn't that beautiful? And so even if you get that, even the feeling of it, or for some of you it may well have been the abandonment of parents, God is a God who holds us close, who wants to draw us into himself. And that struck home to me that morning. It was a midnight clear experience in the middle of the morning. God holds me close to himself. Deanna is going to share with us a midnight clear moment. Don, are you going to come and hold her hand? No.
Thank you, Kendell. Yes, you may notice that there's something that I cannot hide today, and that is what's going to be the basis of my presentation this morning, and that is some surgery that I had to my left thumb this week. Donald has been a very wonderful and caring carer to me this week, and I thank him for that. It's 3 a.m. and all is still. I can see the street light through the double blinds. Other smaller lights are glowing within the room, red and green. The room is spacious. I can faintly see its outlines. It's completely quiet, and I'm on my own. I'm very comfortable. The after effects of the anesthetic and the other painkillers have rendered me perfectly poised between relaxation and deep thankfulness. I have read, anecdotally, that when patients are scared of surgery, it is sometimes a premonition that they're going to die. And I was scared on Monday, so much so that it pushed my blood pressure up. I did think there was a chance that I might not wake up again. There's always that chance. And so I made my peace with God, phoned my kids, and got ready for surgery. But I knew that even if I did wake up, there was the chance that the pain would be overwhelming. Because I've had 2 other previous experiences with hand surgery, and they have left their mark in more ways than one. But now, here I am, and here is God. I was interested that Kendell quoted Psalm 139 because that's the psalm that has spoken to me a number of times in my life, and it is the psalm, it is the verse that the words that come in verse 18. When I wake up, you are still with me. Those particular words became very precious to me almost 30 years ago now, when on my 30th birthday I developed a viral encephalitis and went to hospital, leaving behind a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and then thinking that I was going to die, and then scared that I wasn't going to die because it was so painful. But this verse became very, very precious to me. When I wake up, you are still with me. And I thought about this verse as I was lying in the hospital bed at 3 a.m. this past week. So as I lie there in wondrous, pain-free comfort, my thoughts go to a devotional that I recently heard that challenged me to consider the one thing that I had most frequently brought to God this past year. You might want to think about this. You may want to consider this. What is the one thing that you have most consistently asked God for this year? What is the one thing you have brought to Him this year? Now, I remembered that during the devotional, I made a note, mental note, that this was something I needed to think about in greater detail. Because it seemed to me that when I thought back upon the past year, the thing that I had most approached Him for was to ask for, to plead for, was His blessing. And now it is Tuesday morning, the surgery is over, all is still. It feels as though this very busy, wonderful year has skidded to a very sudden standstill, and I can finally, at last, think about this question. Is it right to always be asking, to come to the throne of grace with something that I need? Where were my acts of devotion, my psalms of praise? Where was my thanks and my gratitude? And what did it say about my relationship with God? To always petition for blessing, to always be standing with my hand outstretched. But you know, in these early morning hours, my midnight clear moment, it comes to me that my question has not so much to do with my relationship with God, but rather with His relationship with me. I guess I fear that somehow, I'm scared that somehow His blessings will run out. Will He eventually reach a point of impatience with me? will he say one day, well, really, I've given you so much. Isn't it enough already? Did he have only so many blessings that he could hand out? And was I close to reaching my quota? But on Tuesday morning, as I lie there in suspended animation, I can see that God is bountiful and that it is in his nature to give and give and give. And I realize that my open hand, my continual requesting of his grace and his blessing places me in exactly the right relationship to him. It acknowledges his abundance and my need, his boundless reservoir of blessings and my tiny hand of asking. He's generous, charitable, benevolent, beneficent, open-handed, big-hearted, great-hearted, munificent, noble, unselfish, selfless, self-sacrificing, ungrudging, unstinting bounty in pouring himself out for us upon that midnight clear so long ago. So I suspect in 2017 that I might continue to ask, acknowledging that without him I can do nothing. Without him there is nothing. Without him I am nothing. Only in him there is light and life and love and grace. And so, until one day he says to me, now it is enough. Now it is enough. Come, let your heart beat next to mine. Until that time, I can do no other than to ask continuously and continually for his blessing.
Good morning, church. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mladen. I'm associate pastor here. And I will share a story with you as well this morning. I was trying to find something that you could relate to easier than the story I have, but perhaps this story has shaped me more than some other ones. This was my midnight clear. By the time I found this bullet in the book behind me in the room I slept, I already received the news that a little girl was killed by a sniper in the street I just passed this afternoon. I was in Sarajevo, in Bosnia, in 1994, when the city was in besiegement. And it was a part of the civil war which we had in Yugoslavia when Yugoslavia was falling apart. Croatia was kind of safe by that time, there was not much more of fight. But Bosnia was still in a huge, huge mess. And I came in this city with the Adra, convoy of Adra, bringing some help. Plan was to stay 5 days, have a concert, leave. I go back to England where I continue my theological studies in Newbold College, and then the borders closed, and the only road with which the humanitarian agencies could enter the city was closed, and therefore I couldn't leave. I used all of my money, and there was already now 3 weeks instead of 5 days that I was trapped in Sarajevo. I had communication with my parents, and this made it even worse because I realized that my mom was telling me that my father is going to have another heart attack if I don't escape Sarajevo very fast, which proved to be true recently again. Denise and I are going to see my parents just tomorrow. Tomorrow morning we are flying home because his heart is really, really bad as well. But back in 1994, he was watching television and what's happening in Sarajevo and Bosnia. And there were threats that a new invasion, a new attacks would be happening in Sarajevo, and where the enemy outside would go inside and completely destroy it or conquer it. And in this case, and I'm there, we don't know what will happen to me. So my dad tried to bribe the UN to get me out somehow, and tried to talk to ADRA and people if they could fly me out, and there was absolutely no help. I was stuck in this city. And when he talked to our church, trying to see if they could help somehow me getting out, and to our embassy, Croatian embassy in Bosnia, they simply said, well, there is completely out of our control. This was August. But what we can do is we can call, our church said, we can call the Newbold College and tell them you won't be coming there for school in October. It's August. I won't be coming in school in October. I'm just pointing this out how serious this seemed to me, to my parents, because all around me there were walls of enemy, walls of minefields, walls of big guns, and there is me sitting there. There was no way around it, outside of it, apart from one small tunnel, and I don't want to go into these details. I think I shared this story with you before, but to get the permit to pass through this tunnel, you have to be either a military serviceman, which I wasn't, or a citizen of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which I wasn't. I was a Croat, a foreigner. And therefore, no one who is a foreigner gets the permit to pass through this tunnel, which is very narrow and goes underneath the airport. And it's hidden from beginning, and its ends are hidden so the snipers would not be able to go there and kill people entering this tunnel and exiting it as well. It's hidden so that, well, apart from Bosnians, the foreigners were not supposed to know where it starts. And I was talking to the pastor of the church where I was staying and asking him, can we do something? I need to go home. And he was saying, we can't do anything. I asked anywhere, and you can't go anywhere. So you can't leave the Sarajevo. So I asked, what about this tunnel? And he said, this is crazy idea, Mladen, because first, you can't get permit to go through this. Second, once you go through the tunnel, you are still in a crazy area where you have to cross this huge mountain called, well, it's not huge, but you have to walk around 30-something kilometers in a mountain called Igman. There is no public transport. The people who may go sometimes are very irregular, and they could be very dodgy. You are a Croat. Around you, people who are holding the city are Muslims. They're not just religious Muslim, but ethnically as well. And Muslims and Croats just recently had a fight as well. If some of them were fought against the Croats and killed, some of their relatives were killed, they may take revenge on you. And there are no guides across the mountains. There are minefields in the mountains. There are enemy patrols in the mountains, and they can kill you anytime, possibly, if you encounter them. So it's a crazy idea, he said to me, don't do this. Secretly, however, I couldn't wait, and I went to this army headquarters, and somehow I found the VDCs I was asking, go to this guy and explain my situation. I came with Radra, I need to go home. My father is going to have a heart attack if I don't go home. Can I get permit to pass through the tunnel? And he simply said, absolutely no. You are not a citizen. But can I apply for it? And he was really joking with me and said, well, you can apply just to waste my time, but you won't get it. So I applied anyway. And I went home in the church where we slept, and I prayed. And I prayed and I prayed because I knew from this permit it will decide whether I have a chance to leave this place or not. And tomorrow morning, to shorten the story and the whole night of my praying, I knock on the same guy's there. I enter, and he looks at me with this bewildered look, and he said, I have no idea how, but you got a permit. And for me, this is a bigger moment of God's miracle than what happened afterwards, because afterwards I had to go through tunnel, run up the hill to hide from the snipers, go through the forest. But walking in the forest with another group of refugees as well, I was so happy. I was whistling and it was raining, and I just stayed in my shorts and put everything else in the bag. And I was happy because a moment like this, you know that, excuse me, my being was here. He takes you out of the enemy's camp. He provides a miracle. In my mind, there was no doubt that I will not make it through all these obstacles. And when we made it, stop, man. When we made it to Split, and I was able to call my father and tell him I'm in Split, in Croatia. He was just like me, emotional and crazy and stupid, and started crying, and probably that's why I'm crying as well now. But in this moment, I realized one thing, which I knew for a while. War is raging, not just in Bosnia, but in all planet. War is raging, whether you live in Cambodia or Myanmar or in my dodgy country or in this beautiful country of Australia. There is a war around you. There is diseases, there is animosity, there is something that you are fighting right now. Somewhere where you're feeling that the whole walls are collapsing on you, you are surrounded by enemy. And my midnight clear was this: when I call to God, He will be with me. And I praise Him for this. And I know that even though war is raging, God is still in control. I don't believe in the song called "So This Is Christmas." John Lennon, he says, "So this is Christmas, what have you done?" And then there is this line, "War is over if you want it." I don't know, but this is not my experience, people. When I talk to you, my church members, when I talk to people outside, war is happening in every single life. And in every single life, there is a God needed to be your support, to be your guide, to do miracles for you, or just to encourage you while you walk through this shadow of death. Because God, despite of everything, is still in control. This is my midnight moment. And one text that I like to share is this, from Joshua 1:9, my baptism text. "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Thank you. Stay with me. Stay with me.